It's time to ring the bell. The quarterback competition in New Orleans is officially underway. We got all that and a little bit of land yap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode, we're taking a look at some of the things that we're hoping to learn about the New Orleans Saints offense throughout OTAs this week. We'll take a look at health and injury status, some of the injuries that we're hoping to maybe get some updates on, as well as a big rule change or lack thereof that could impact the New Orleans Saints potentially in 2025. We'll dive into the offensive lineup, things like the wide receivers, where will they end up being, and who will contribute in the slot, and much more. We're going to lead it all off with round one of the New Orleans Saints quarterback battle, which is officially underway. We appreciate you very, very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, for being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The New Orleans Saints quarterback competition is officially underway, and we get our opportunity to get our eyes on it in the New Orleans media on Thursday. And I'm very, very excited to begin to see how this all pans out. I want to take a look at the players that are going to be participating in that battle, the ones that are going to be in serious competition, and what it is that we're going to be looking for, and what it is that we're not going to necessarily put too much stock in. So we know the names, right? Rookie Tyler Shough, as well as undrafted free agent rookie Hunter Dekkers, second year quarterback in Spencer Rattler, and third year quarterback in Kendre. It still feels very much like the serious players in this conversation are Shough and Rattler, with Haener involved as well. I think Dekkers probably isn't necessarily in the starting potential conversation unless he completely lights things up. Then, of course, you listen to what your eyes tell you, right? I mean, there's no reason to rule the kid out, but it doesn't feel like he's necessarily in the conversation, quote unquote, at this time. So this is where OTAs kind of begin to lay out the framework a little bit more, right? We'll get to see some things in terms of how they operate, how it is that, the physical traits as well, what the throws look like, the deep balls, all these other things. Like, there's going to be a lot of those big things that we'll see as well. But I want to highlight four of the key things that I think I'm going to be watching for, and I think many people are going to be watching for. A big part of it is just running the operation, being able to get to the line of scrimmage, make calls, make checks, all these other things. You're not necessarily doing any 11-on-11 team drills during this. Kellen Moore said as much. They will run some 7-on-7s, though. So an opportunity still to see how these players act when they get to the line of scrimmage, command the offense, the command that they have they communicated clearly? Does everyone understand their assignment on offense? All of those pieces. The second thing is just simply getting in and out of the huddle. John Hendricks and I spoke about this on Monday's squad show, which will be live again Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time if you want to come through for that. But we spoke about this from looking at training camp last year and the amount of times that young quarterbacks had to re-huddle. You break the huddle, you get to the line of scrimmage. It's clear that people don't necessarily know what it is they're doing, or they're in the wrong formation, or the wrong personnel is in, whatever it might be. Then you get to the line of scrimmage, and then you end up having to re-huddle because something was wrong. So we're watching them get in and out of the huddle in that way in terms of making sure that when they get there, they stay there. Very simple, right? If they're not having to re-huddle, then they've communicated clearly, everything's working before they even get to the line of scrimmage. The operation at the line of scrimmage becomes that next piece. I think you're looking for the mental errors as well. Let's say that, they come up for a run play. They get out of the huddle clean. They get up to the line of scrimmage. Everything looks good. They take the snap, but then as they take the snap, they turn to the left to hand the ball off, even though the rusher goes to the right. That's a mental error. That's one of those things that you're looking for. Mental errors in terms of snap exchanges at the line of scrimmage, things like that. Head fakes and things that would otherwise cause false starts. If they're operating in any kind of simulated clock, even though they wouldn't necessarily be doing it full speed, but they're operating with any kind of simulated clock situation, how do you manage that? All of these other pieces. Like, those are going to be some of the other kind of mental error things that you're looking for as well, which are going to be more important than the physical errors, which we'll get to here in a moment. One physical thing that I am going to add onto this, because everything that I've mentioned so far is very much mental, the operation side of it. It's what Kellen Moore said was going to set these guys apart. So it's what I'm going to be closely watching. But one physical thing that I'm going to be watching for is going to be ball placement and anticipation. It's really the ball placement part. I did say it was one thing, so let me stick to one thing, as I said. And for me, it's ball placement, right? When they do throw a pass, are they in the frame of the wide receiver? Are they behind the wide receiver as they're crossing in the opposite direction? Is the wideout having to reach outside of their frame, or are they dropping it in the bucket? Are they, putting these passes where only a receiver can catch them in situations where they might be running those 7-on-7s and things like that, where there are defenders involved? So I think that ball placement as something that a quarterback has to mentally be able to understand and physically be able to execute kind of blurs the line a little bit for me. That's just me personally. So I will be watching that as well. What I'm not going to put too much stock into in OTAs are the mistakes, right? Interceptions, passes thrown that end up getting broken up, things like that. I'm not going to put too much stock into that unless it's absolutely undeniable that it's a big issue. I mean, there's stories coming out of New England Patriots OTAs right now about Drake May having thrown 4 interceptions over the course of his 16 passes. Yeah, you're probably going to talk about that. But if somebody goes out there and throws 10 passes and one of them is intercepted, I'm not going to make a big deal out of that. Even if the interception is an egregious one or something like that, I'm just not going to make a big deal out of that because it's so early in the process that what you really want to see is if those mistakes happen, how do they respond to that? How do they rebound from that? How do they make sure that that doesn't happen again as they move forward? The other thing is going to be that I'm not going to put too much stock into is who's getting first team reps. They're not doing full team drills, but someone will operate with the first team, someone will operate with the second team, someone will operate with the other teams. And I'm not going to put too much into that because there's a couple of different reasons. The first of which is it's not super indicative of what it is that these players are doing to get ready for the season in terms of chemistry building. It's more about like getting everything from the classroom to on its feet on the field. And so you're going to see these guys probably move around. You're going to see many of them take snaps with 3 different teams and 3 different sets of players. And because some players, look, OTAs are voluntary. Some veterans won't be there. So you'll never have the full first team, the full second team, the full whatever. I don't even know that they know their full first team, second team at this time. Like OTAs is a big part of figuring all that out. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that either. And to be fair, when I talk about not putting too much stock into the mistakes, I'm not going to really put too much stock into the big plays as well, unless they're coming consistently. And so if you're, if a quarterback completes this big, vertical route down the field and it goes for what would be a touchdown in 7-on-7s, that's great. There's no pass rush. You're not operating full speed. There's no contact, all these other things. You're not in full pads. Like, that's awesome. Great that happens. But it's not something that I'm going to put a ton of stock into unless, just like with the interceptions, if it comes in droves that all of a sudden there's just big play after big play after big play after big play, then yeah, you're probably going to feel the excitement for the team around that. You're going to feel the excitement for the fan base around that. So those will be the things that I will and won't necessarily be looking for when it comes to what the New Orleans Saints quarterback competition is going to be starting as here over the course of this week and as we get into the building next week. I'm going to take a look next at the things that are going on around those quarterbacks, starting off with the offensive line, which is sure to see some shuffling. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. I've not been on the hiring side of LinkedIn Jobs, but I have been on the job search side of LinkedIn Jobs. And I cannot stress enough how many opportunities I found because LinkedIn simply served me an opportunity that I didn't even know that I was looking for, especially when I was working in theater and you're trying to find like as stable an opportunity as you can in that field, because otherwise you're hopping from contract to contract to contract and all those other things. I ended up lucking into some pretty cool stuff because LinkedIn Jobs simply handed it over to me. So if you're a small business owner and you're trying to actually clock out as best as you can at 5, let LinkedIn Jobs do the rest. You post your job for free. They'll make sure that it gets in front of your network. You can also make sure that you get those qualified candidates that you're looking for all in one place and that expansive LinkedIn network as well. It's why 72% of small business owners say that LinkedIn helped them find high quality hires. Post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family. The quarterback competition is, of course, big, but what's going to be most important or even more important or just as important, however it is you want to look at it, is going to be what's going on around the quarterback throughout the 2025 New Orleans Saints season as well. So I got 3 positions that I want to take a look at to tell you what it is that we're going to be looking for as OTAs kick off. Sticking with the offensive side here, we'll get into the defensive side in tomorrow's episode, but I want to start off with looking at the offensive line. Offensive line is sure to see some shuffling all throughout the OTA period. We already saw some of that during rookie minicamp, starting with rookie left tackle, rookie offensive lineman, Kelvin Banks Jr., who was drafted in the first round of this year's draft, the leadoff hitter, if you will, for this year's New Orleans Saints draft class. So when it comes to Kelvin Banks Jr., the question now becomes, where will he line up? We saw him at both guard spots and both tackle spots throughout rookie minicamp. Kellen Moore acknowledged that was part of the minicamp kind of process. Now, what's going to happen when you've got veterans in the building? I went through and I scrubbed through the video again that the New Orleans Saints posted of the first day of OTAs, which was yesterday on Tuesday, and you could see at least Trevor Penning there. I didn't find Taliesin Fuanga in there. It doesn't mean that he wasn't there. He probably is. I was just trying to figure out who was captured on camera, basically, in the 1 minute and 1 second, video that they shared on YouTube and social media. And so, at least one of those other tackles is there. More than likely, all 3 of those top tackles are there. Kelvin Banks Jr., Taliesin Fuanga, Trevor Penning. So where does Kelvin Banks Jr. line up? I assume that he'll move around. Left tackle, right tackle, left guard. I assume that he'll play at least in each one of those spots. If Cesar Ruiz is there, then obviously, Kelvin Banks in the unit that he's working with will probably not take right guard snaps. But if they use him in a different unit, then maybe he does get some right guard snaps as well. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly where Kelvin Banks lines up. It seems that the Saints are going to continue to shuffle and rotate this position group. So then that brings us to Trevor Penning and Taliesin Fuanga. Where do they line up? What's first? What happens last? There's going to be so much in terms of what it is that we're going to be looking for here. And so if Kelvin Banks starts off at left tackle, then the question becomes, is Trevor Penning still at right tackle? Or do they plug Taliesin Fuanga there and then finally try Trevor Penning on the interior, which we've kind of begun to advocate for here on the show, which for those of you that are everydayers, that's been a long journey for me. That's something I've pushed back against for a long time. But at this point, if Trevor Penning is one of your 5 best offensive linemen, keep him on the field. And so one way to do that might be to move him towards the interior or move another one of those players into the interior. But I don't know that the Saints are necessarily going to go that route, but we also don't know which route they're going to go. So we'll be watching to see where Kelvin Banks Jr., where Trevor Penning, where Taliesin Fuanga, assuming all 3 are in attendance, where they move, where they line up, where they are. The other thing that's going to be really interesting for me on the offensive line is if none of those players are taking snaps at left guard, which could be because it's second team or third team or whatever. If none of those players are taking a snap at left guard, who does? Dylan Radunz, who the Saints just signed this offseason, who played a lot of right guard at Tennessee over the course of the past few years, but has the versatility to play tackle, guard, pretty much put him anywhere you want. Or Nick Saldiveri. And Nick Saldiveri question mark is a really big one because this isn't the coaching staff that drafted Nick Saldiveri, but yet this is the coaching staff that went and signed Dylan Radunz. And so I'll be very interested to see who comes out on top or who is the first, who's seen above the other, right? Who gets the first crack at left guard when it's not one of those other guys. So that's the other piece that I'm going to be looking for in all of this. Let's jump to wide receiver roles because I think there's going to be some shifting things there too. Who will be the big, who will be the slot receiver if the Saints deploy 3 wide receivers at any point during OTAs in those 7-on-7s. We'll have to wait and see if they do that. But if they do, curious to see who that slot receiver is going to be. Do you use Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed on the outside? Do you move one of those guys inside? We'll get to Rashid Shaheed with another conversation here in a moment. But if he's not on the field, is that where Brandon Cook steps in? And then that brings us to our next player that we're going to be looking for. Number 24, wide receiver number 24, Donovan Peoples-Jones. And so Donovan Peoples-Jones being a guy that could play that big slot role, a guy that could end up being on the outside as well. There's a lot of places where you could potentially utilize him. And he's going to stick out like a sore thumb being a wide receiver wearing the number 24. I can't wait to ask him why he chose that number. But he is one that will be interesting to see where it is that he ends up contributing for this team as he looks to revitalize his career and get back to where he was during that 2022 Cleveland Browns season where he was outstanding, 839 receiving yards, so on and so forth. Did play a lot in the slot during that time as well. And so could we see him end up stepping into that role if he is indeed in attendance? We do know that Cedric Wilson Jr. has been in attendance, who could be very interesting to watch as well. Cedric Wilson Jr.'s most successful season as a Dallas Cowboy came with Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator and offensive play caller during which time Cedric Wilson played a lot in the slot. So maybe we could see him end up manning that role as well. And then finally, just to continue our kind of whip around the rest of the positions around quarterback, sans tight end, which I'm going to save until we're talking about injuries and stuff like that, is running back. I believe we know that Alvin Kamara is not going to be in attendance. And remember, these are voluntary. It doesn't mean anything that he's not in attendance. Yes, there's a new offensive system. Yes, there's a new coach. Yes, there's a new offensive play caller. But also, yes, that's Alvin Kamara. He'll be fine. We will not be overreacting to Alvin Kamara not being a part of OTAs for like the 50th season in a row. I know it's not actually been 50 seasons. I'm exaggerating, but it's fine. I believe he said he was going to be in Jordan. And good news, he said he's going to be the freshest one out in Jordan as well. So that's pretty good. But I am curious to see, does Kendre Miller lead the way as the longest tenured Saint at running back? He's not the longest tenured NFL player. That would be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he is the longest tenured Saint in that situation. And that kind of brings me all the way back to a little bit what we were just discussing with the quarterbacks, though. Like, who is first team, who is second team? It means a little something now, but might not mean anything by the time that we get to training camp and all those other things. But I am really curious because I do think that there is a question mark about how this coaching staff handles and looks at and views and has an outlook on Kendre Miller versus the seemingly spiteful relationship that seemed to exist between him and the coaching staff over the course of the past few years, particularly with head coach Dennis Allen, or former head coach Dennis Allen. And so curious to just see the contributions from Kendre, who's first in the running back lineups and all those other things. How involved is Velus Jones Jr. going to be? This is a guy that Lance Moore in our Saints Squad show on Monday highlighted as the underrated or under the radar veteran that could contribute in 2025. And that's a player that I had not considered in that situation. But this is a guy that was also a wide receiver at Tennessee. Before that, played running back first, and then came to the NFL as a wide receiver and then transitioned over to running back. The Saints have him designated as a running back, but he was also seen in videos working with the wide receivers during the first day of OTAs. So I'm just interested to see how involved he's going to be at which positions. Because if you can utilize him in a bunch of different ways, I had somebody reach out and say, oh, they signed Hunter Dekkers because they're going to use him like Taysom Hill. That might not be the case. That might be more of a Velus Jones Jr. role than that might be a Hunter Dekkers role and everything like that. And so it could be pretty interesting to see if Velus Jones Jr. kind of gets this. It's not really Taysom Hill treatment. I'm kind of being hyperbolic when I say that, but like the Ty Montgomery treatment, right? The Saints had that here in New Orleans before, had him outside at wide receiver, had him run routes out of the backfield, turn around and hand the ball off to him, all those other things. And so Velus Jones Jr. getting involved at both of those positions, I think maximizes his opportunity to A, make the roster, and then B, contribute. And then finally, amongst the running backs, I think you're watching for Devin Neal, number 30, the Saints 6th-round selection, or one of the Saints 6th-round selections, or no, the Saints 6th-round selection. And a player that has shown that he moves very fluidly, moves differently than the rest of the room, all those other things, young guy, all that. Like he could be the next piece for the New Orleans Saints and for Kellen Moore's run game. So, of course, keeping a close eye on number 30 as well. Coming up next, over on the offensive side, the New Orleans Saints in almost entire tight end position has been impacted by injuries. So I want to take a look at what that means for some of the guys that are going to be on the field on Thursday. Let's get to that next. We continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. It feels like kismet almost, having conversations about the Saints and injury already here in May. But don't worry, we're not having a conversation about new injury. I think one of the other things that we're set to learn throughout OTAs is how is the recovery progress for certain players. For instance, seeing players participate in off-season workouts, which we have seen with tight end Foster Moreau, as well as wide receiver Rashid Shaheed. Those are guys that are coming off of season-ending injuries. We've also seen Chris Olave participating both in off-season workouts, which is different than off-season team activities, which is when you can start doing 7-on-7s, 9-on-7s, 11-on-11s, all those other things. Off-season workouts is when you're literally like you're working out, right? Like you're on the field, but you're not running formations, you're not doing all this other stuff. So we've seen Rashid Shaheed, for instance, participating in the off-season workouts, but I did not spot him in the kind of hype video that the Saints put out on social media for their first day of OTAs. Now, again, there's a difference between not participating and not being caught on camera, right? Like those are two different things. There's also a big difference between being caught on camera and the footage that's actually used, right? So those are things to keep in mind here. So it'll be interesting to see, is Rashid Shaheed participating already at the capacity of, operating in 7-on-7s, running routes, doing position drills, all those other things. So he'll be a big player that we'll be watching out for. But I think the position that's most impacted by this viewpoint or this vantage point is going to be tight end. Juwan Johnson should be good to go if he's present. Again, voluntary OTAs. But Foster Moreau, maybe not, right? Could be participating in the workouts, but not necessarily, and took the time to participate with Tyler Shough in a throwing session. But again, that's a different situation than what OTAs are and what's allowed during OTAs. So he'll be another player that we're going to be watching out for as well. And so some of that is, are they present? Some of that is, are they participating? Some of it is like, are they in the waiting room at the end of the indoor facility while people are working on the field? Things like that. Like any bit of presence is good progress. And so both of those players have been present. So there is good progress. This just gives us an idea of what the progress, if the progress has gotten them back on the field in this capacity of OTAs, which it might not now. But remember, there's 10 of these practices over a course of a maximum of 4 weeks, for the Saints 3 weeks. And so who's present during the third OTA might not be the same or equal to who's present during the 7th or 10th OTA. So we'll have to see kind of how that entire process unfolds versus just how the first practice that media gets to see has unfolded. The other name, of course, that consistently comes up in this conversation is Taysom Hill. I don't expect to see Taysom Hill. I would be very surprised to see Taysom Hill. I don't know that we're going to see Taysom Hill during training camp. I don't know that we're going to see Taysom Hill for the beginning of the season. I mean, we will see him, but I don't know that he's going to be on the field. And I don't know that we'll see him during OTAs at all. So I would just kind of pump the brakes on any expectations there so that when we say, hey, there was no Taysom Hill at OTAs, it's not a big surprise. I wouldn't consider that a big surprise. Mickey Loomis, general manager himself, said before the NFL draft that it's a significant knee injury or a serious knee injury, I think is what he said. And so it's going to take time. And so OTAs is not enough time between the NFL draft and a point. So I don't think that we'll be seeing him out on the field for certain. Eric McCoy's another one that wasn't able to finish the season on the field. He was already participating during OTAs, all those other things. Like we already saw him in the video and all. Cesar Ruiz already saw him in the video. And so I think for the most part, you're going to see a healthy offensive line. But you will also see players that aren't there because of personal reasons. This is kind of jumping over to the defensive side, but on the defensive side, like Vernon Broughton, the Saints' third-round pick, or one of the Saints' third-round selections, he and Camille, his wife, had a baby, and that's awesome. And that was on the first day of OTAs on Tuesday. So if he's not there on Thursday, that kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be too concerned about those situations because sometimes players are not present for things that have nothing to do with injury. It's just personal stuff. I mean, we see that all the time. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but those players that we already know who are coming off of injury will at least get some kind of a glimpse in terms of their progress. And then what veterans are present is always really interesting. I mean, look, Cam Jordan's going into his 15th NFL year and he's participating in OTAs. And he will continue to participate in OTAs. I think that's awesome. I'm fairly certain Tyrann Mathieu is going into his 13th NFL season. I'm fairly certain that I saw him on one of those, in one of the shots in the background and everything like that. And so, when you see some of these veteran leaders that are out there as well participating in OTAs, that's a positive thing. It's not necessarily a negative thing if they're not, but it does show something when they are. And that means something to younger players in their position group. It also gives those younger players in the position group a veteran to lean on when it comes down to, asking questions or how is this different than what you've done before or whatever, right? Like if you're somebody that's a second year player and you're coming in and you're trying to translate 1 year of that New Orleans Saints defense into this Brandon Staley defense, you're probably going to have some questions. And so working with a veteran can help in those situations. So cool to see some of those vets that are out there. Other vets like Ugo Amadi. I know I saw Pete Werner and several other veteran players. I mean, and those are the players that are no longer on rookie contracts, but you can look at some of the young vets too. I mean, Carl Granderson was out there. You can look at some of the young vets too, like Chris Olave, who's out there and had things going on. So yeah, so those are the things that we're going to be paying attention to on the offensive side when it comes to OTAs, and we'll be out there during most of the day tomorrow. There'll be an episode tomorrow morning before OTAs begin, taking a look at the same idea, but over on the defensive side. And then we'll recap all of it on Friday's show. We'll go live Thursday if there's anything big, Thursday evening if there's anything big. But one other thing that I wanted to mention in today's show, just as a little bit of lagniappe, is the tush push. The tush push has been voted on, and it remains in the NFL, as well it should. I have some opinions on the tush push personally that I'll make very quick, just so everybody kind of knows where I stand. You might not really care about the opinion, but that's okay. I don't blame you. But the idea of banning the tush push because of health and safety when there's no demonstrable evidence at all and there's no data to support that there is any injury risk is wild to me. I think that shows you in a very non-transparent way what the goal here actually is, which is to get a play out of the game that teams are having trouble stopping. And I kind of agree with Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you're having trouble with the tush push, don't ban it. Learn how to stop it. Be better. And I think that that's what teams should do as well. This is a rugby style skirmish. Like, this is something that you can figure out. And so I'm against the idea of banning the tush push, mostly because I don't like the idea that Roger Goodell, I could probably just put a period on that sentence, honestly, right there. But I don't like the idea that Roger Goodell and these owners can come together and ban anything that they're struggling to understand or ban anything that they're struggling to stop. I think that that's a reckless precedent to set, right? And so I think that the tush push should remain in the game. It needed 24 votes in order to be banned. It got 22, which is up from April's owners meeting where it was split 16-16. So it'll probably be banned by 2026, but at least for 2025, it remains in the game. It will be interesting. Kellen Moore, of course, didn't invent the tush push, but he knows how to execute the tush push because of his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. So it is an interesting topic of, will he bring the tush push here to New Orleans? I think with the idea that it's probably going to be banned in 2026, I don't imagine that they're going to focus and put a lot of time into it, but could be really interesting to at least line up as if you were going to run it and then run something else or something like that. It could be very interesting, but it does remain in the game. The Saints have one of the few people in the league with inside knowledge on how to execute it. We'll see if they end up bringing it here to New Orleans. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, looking at the defensive side of OTAs, what it is that we're looking for, what we want to see, what we're hoping to see, what we're hoping to learn. We'll dive into all of that in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. Big shout out to a new everydayer, Carlos, that found the show and has checked us out. Hope that you'll stick around. Appreciate you being here. And if you need more around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.